was your objective? So Ingress was my ticket to tenure, and that was the only thing of any significance. She was a tenured professor already at that point. So his goal was to get the research and the creation work. I think you should interview him because I would just be putting words in his mouth, and I think he's a control theory guy, or an EE guy, and I think he viewed this as a way to broaden his interests, and which he's very, very successfully done. So I said you should ask him. What I'm trying to get at is whether that early useful to say that this is obviously an entrepreneurial opportunity. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. So I can tell you how the entrepreneurial thing came about, but that was much later. So let's stay with that. In building the system that you built, you were aware of system hardware. Did you put a similar model as far as implementation is concerned? Whether you just to say the system our team was much bigger. I mean, they had like 12 PhDs. We had me and Gene, one full-time programmer, some pickup students. They were forced to use the N270. They were forced to do an mainframe implementation. We quickly figured out, the data center at Berkeley had a CDC 6400, which was a batch machine. It was obvious that was a non-starter to do data system on. So we hustled it online to buy our own computer. And what happened was, Ken Thompson was of Unix fame, it turns out, at Berkeley. And so through a series of lucky accidents, we said, well, let's buy a mini computer and Unix on it. And so we got Ken Thompson to bring out Unix and install it. I think we were probably the first installation of Unix outside of Bell Labs. That may not be true, but we were very early on. What mini computer did you get? We had a PDP 1140, well within 40. So that made it a very good thing to get a much smaller machine. So we were fundamentally focused on mini computer and Unix. We were coding in C. So we were very early. Unix, basically we bought the Unix way of doing things completely. So it's like we had a public domain system to present to anybody. This is how that could had to get lawyers involved and sign non-disclosures to get your system out to anybody. The projects just were fairly, the implementations are very different. And collectively, our guys focused on whether it's intuitive in SQL versus the Perl, integrate them in some way. No, they're not integrated. The nature of the stuff is different. With the credential. In my opinion, the big error that the SQL guys made was Square had this nice feature that you said, put in words, select name from employee, where department, how you find the department, so that's a block, how you find the department, well, the department, select department, from department table, before you move on. That's a very nice block structure. So inner blocks and outer blocks, the inner block needs some information, the inner words, that's a very nice block structure language. And that was basically a lot of the philosophy of Square. The trouble is that first of all, aggregates don't work in this model. And secondly, it turns out that there are a bunch of queries that cannot be solved in this purely block structure fashion. And you have to have, instead of having and the whole idea was you evaluate the inner, that produces an answer, you substitute that into the inner, and you do sort of from inside to out to solve the query. But there's a whole bunch of queries that's not a general enough query paradigm. So what ended up having to happen was SQL had to get extended. And I think SQL 2, in 1976. And so it put in the notion of, in SQL 1, you did joins from outer inner blocks to outer blocks. In SQL 2, you could have multi-table blocks, so that you could, say, select yada-yada from employee, comma, E, department, comma, D, and you could have single block multi-table queries. And that basically rendered the block structure notation in SQL 1 obsolete. And instead of redesigning the language completely to get rid of the nested nature of SQL, they just tacked on the extra stuff. And so I think SQL could have used a total redesign from SQL 1 to SQL 2, and they didn't do it. And you have to talk to Dachi about what he was thinking about at the time. But anyway, Quell was always it had no nested structure. People believe in nested structures. So the two languages were very semantically different. So you couldn't have put them together. And Gene Long was the conceptualizer for the language then. Did you find areas or types of queries in which Quell was not an effective way to work Well, I think sort of when, in the early 80s, when Oracle had commercialized SQL and Ingres Corporation had commercialized Ingres, a big selling feature of Ingres was that Quell was a much nicer language than SQL. And I think that was generally agreed to by practically everybody at the time.
Nicer in the sense of being able to form the queries more readily, or better in the sense of leading to better search techniques?
Or both.
So there's both areas you feel is advantageous.
Yeah. Well, I think
and the comments were made at a meeting. Almost everyone there seemed to feel that Quell was a better language. I'm not even understanding what they agree with that. I don't know.
Well, see, the problem with SQL is the natural way. I don't want to get too technical with this before I'm SQL. But if you have a block structured language, it turns out that the natural way to solve it is from inside out, as I said a few minutes ago. But that may not be the best. That may not be the best strategy. In order to look at all strategies, you've got to flatten the query into a single block, and then have an optimizer look at all the possibilities, which was what Quell did. And so you want a flat language for the benefit of the optimizer. And so the system archives, in fact, eventually flattens all their nested queries, thereby rendering the whole nesting structure as completely unnecessary.
You have a defined architecture that caused you, you're guilty of some things that you could get around.
Right. So I think that was one of the advantages of Quell. It had a cleaner notion of aggregates. One of the things that mystifies me is that in SQL, if you have an outer block and an inner block, so you can say select name from employee where department equals select department name from department where floor equals 1. So remember, there's an equals between the two blocks. Take the same query, take out the equals and put in the word in, where department in, and then make the inner block. Well, you would think, under any ordinary circumstances, that those two queries would have the same meaning, but they don't. And so, for whatever reason, Don built in some very strange semantics into SQL that annoy programmers to this very day.
I'm going to push ahead as you suggest. We're now in 1976. You have a reasonably good version of Ingres working. You have 50, 60 locations that are using it pretty much on the PDP-11s or equivalent machines, or anything that ran under anything that ran Unix.
Well, the only things that ran Unix at the time were PDP-11s. Okay, so this is all on 1140s, 1145s.
So are you providing any assistance or consulting help to these people who are using the system?
So by about 1977, we actually had a pretty significant commercial user, which was New York Telephone Company. And there's a guy named Dan Gielan, Gielan, and he picked up the English code and actually used it in a real world project. And we then realized what support meant, because and there's a big difference between academia and people actually trying to get used to work on. So basically, with our one full-time programmer, we were providing support in some sense, as well as doing core development. But the real, sort of the turning point came, I think, in 1978 when Arizona State University considered using Ingres, the thing we had, for a student record system for the university, all 40,000 students worth. And they could get over the fact that you had to go get an unsupported operating system from AT&T in North Carolina. And they could get over the fact that you had to get an unsupported database system from these goofy professors at Berkeley. But the project went down the drain when they realized that there was no COBOL available for Unix. They were COBOL shop. So we were always asked, what's your most serious user of Ingres? And you'd be forced to admit, hardly anybody, because of unsupported operating systems, unsupported database systems, COBOL. So it's clear that if Ingres was going to go anywhere, you had to move to an operating system that was supported, provide the material to the company. So in 79, Larry Rowe by then joined the Ingres project. So we started to try and figure out how to commercialize Ingres. That was in 78, 79. Where did that come from? He's on faculty at Berkeley, and he came together. Okay, he arrived, I think, in 76 or thereabouts. Is he younger generation than her? He's about 5 years younger than I am. So he becomes part of the chief auditor. So he becomes a third professor. So of course, I had no idea how to start a company at that point. So I had somehow been put in touch with a guy named John Nakarut, N-A-K-E-R-U-D. And he was at that point the Western Regional Sales Manager for L&M. And so he was down at EMS. And so I went to see him and said, how do you start a company? And so he immediately was willing to join the team, and he had experience, hustling venture capital money. So it was largely his tutelage that got Ingres Corporation off the ground.
So, John, the other three of you, the four of you were the founders then, and you were was it Relational Technology Inc.? But the product name was from the beginning. Right? Where did the name come from?
Well, you can't, in 72, you can't start a research project at the university without having a name. And so the name came about in 1972, and Gene Wang has some name consultants who thought it up. And it's a little stand for never, they stand for Interactive Graphics and Retrieval System. It came from the name where the acronym. And I don't know, you have to ask Gene, but that came from him.
Now, any issues at this point with the university when you want to start a company or form a corporation that's going to use this thing? Is there any problem with that? And no problem that the three professors will be forming a corporation and working for them full-time.
Berkeley has a policy that the faculty is allowed to consult on the outside up to 1 day a week. And we were simply doing it for our company as opposed to other companies. So some of the others had no problem with that. That's not an issue.
When you formed the company, so when does Relational Technology, when was that formed?
It was in 1980.
So until then,
I'm not sure what the exact date was. Check that. But it was in 1980.
You formed this as a corporation. Did you have outside money? How did you do it?
So we had venture capital backing from supposed to call Sartorial Ventures. So we pitched it down to a bunch of other VCs, and so they backed us.
Getting yourself ready for VCs and creating a new business, that was a new experience for you.
Totally. So,
how did you feel about it? What role did you play?
Well, it was clear immediately that being a tech, that I was, the three of us, I was the best technical salesman. And a lot of it was, like the VCs say, well, if this is such a good idea, why won't IBM maybe theirs next week? So you have to explain to them that software is hard to build. So the VCs, by and large, were not familiar with the software. They didn't realize they had mostly done hardware startups, and you ended up having to teach them why software was hard to build.
Well, you were at a point in time, someone that had just gone public, as the first company that had gone public of these software companies. What was it? Late 70s, right? That was right around there. That was a breakthrough because I was very active in the dev show, and we just couldn't get any of our companies. You couldn't even get that money at that point in time. So you must have done it for someone else. You put money in it for someone.
That was mostly me. I think another way of looking at it was Sartorial Ventures, gave us a very crummy amount. They got a really good deal. So I think their point of view was almost certainly, squeeze them hard, don't put in very much money. And so if it goes belly up, so what? And if it works, we make an unbelievable return on our money. So that's what happened.
What's the percentage? What's the percentage going to for you?
I could reconstruct that, but the market cap of the initial round valued the company post money at less than $1 million. Post of 1980. So I think that by today's standards, the deal sunk for the entrepreneurs.
Did you get the company? Did you get close to it?
I don't remember what I was
in control of you. Control of
fundamentally I've done 5 startups, and the VCs essentially never agreed not to be in control. So like on the downstairs where there was you were taking control of direction. Well, I think in the case of startups, let me see how I can answer that question. I think what I see at the end of the day, the only thing the VCs can do, I guess at the end of to first approximation, the VCs have very, very little power over any company I've been involved in, because you just tell them no, and what they can do, fire me. So I've always been unfireable in any of these ventures. Meaning that if I said I wasn't going to do something, and they said yes you are, then I would quit, and then they had nothing. So I've always held a special position that was very different than in a typical company. So I think they have power, they runs out of money, and then you have to raise money, and then they have power. But I find, to first approximation, their power is pretty limited in any venture I've been involved in.
What was your title then when you formed Relational Technology?
CTO.
You were CTO. Who was the CEO of that company? You never John Acker. Did the others have the final positions, Larry and Gene in the company?
Yeah. So we were all technically consultants 1 day a week, doing various things.
John bringing marketing people then and so forth. Was that too early at that time?
So in 1980 we started operation, and John Acker was basically to save money, and so So the whole idea was to port the English code to VMS, to VMS, because you had to get it because Unix was not supported. There was no report writer, so fill in the utilities that weren't there, write serious documentation, and then work on getting the system to go faster. And so pretty much, we spent at least a year heads down engineering, sort of moving the system into something that we could sell. And so I think there's probably 80. So the company was John Daggerud plus a bunch of engineers for the first 18 months. And then we started to add people.
You had enough initial funding to carry you that long?
So it turned out that at this point, first of all, we lived in Daggerud's basement. So it wasn't a garage operation, it was a basement operation. We didn't buy a computer, we used the one at Lawrence Berkeley Labs. So we lived lean beyond belief. But you had to pay the programmers. Yeah, totally. And so, but we only had like 4 or 5. So a pretty small team. Yeah, that was all we could afford. And so we made $350,000 last. I guess 2 years. Gene will probably know better than to say this is a shoestring operation.
Can you say, quote, you what you daily to figure what were you actually putting in?
Probably daily.
So it didn't become dominant, so I take over your life rankings for sure.
I think, Ingress, early on, we hired a guy named Paul Butterworth, who I think came to your thing, and so he was the chief programmer. So really, the three of us sort of did technical marketing and watched over the engineering team, and you can do that in a day.
You kept the name Relational Technology for a while. When did you change it? Do you remember?
83, sometime around there. Because Oracle's original name was something very close to that, if I remember correctly. Relational Technology Systems or something like that. Well, when we started to sell the product, seriously, Daggerud said, look, I'm the guy from Ingress, I'm not the guy from Relational Technology. So changed, there's no upside to having a different name for the company. Oracle came to the same conclusion.
Because you said Oracle had been in existence a little earlier than you were, but 77 or 78 fixed in my mind is about the time that I was going to come.
They were slightly ahead of us, yeah.
Were you aware then of what they were doing when you formed your company? Oh, sure. Was that something to was that a consideration at that time?
Well, Larry was out in the marketplace with when Oracle didn't work, saying he was 10 times faster than Ingress, which did work. And so that kind of got my shackles up. But the interesting thing about Oracle and Ingress was that Ingress revenues went in 82, 83, 84, went 1 million, 4 million, 9 million. And so we did 9 million in 1984. I think that's right. Probably G1 would probably know better. But even though Oracle had been in the market earlier, we were gaining on them substantially. So I think Oracle did like 12 million and 11 million in 84. So we were gaining on them, and we had a better product. And practically everyone agrees that the Oracle product just stunk at the time. And so we were gaining on them. And the key event, which I think is a complete watershed, was in 84, IBM announced DB2. And sort of up until then, they sold SQL DS on DOS, and that was considered a non-engine to anybody serious. And so they had a dual database strategy, which is run IMS on MVS and run whatever you want on the other operating systems. And so in 84, they announced that DB2 was going to be available on MVS. And that, at the time, IBM had way more throw rate than they have now. And so in one swell swoop, they had enough throw weight that SQL was the answer. And anybody with any other query language, to convert to SQL. And Larry Ellison very skillfully, sort of marketed the heck out of it. We're selling SQL now. And even though Ingress got SQL quicker than anybody else, that over 85, like in 85, Oracle's revenue skyrocketed. And that was pretty much the end, and then Oracle was 2 or 3 times bigger than Ingress. And then they marketed that we were the safe, we're the big guy, we're the safe bet. And they started employing what I call the American House strategy, which is whatever Ingress did, Oracle would announce, well, we're doing that too. And even though they rarely did, it's sort of the standard Microsoft tactic these days. So Oracle and Bill Gates are experts at lying to their customers, sort of selling futures to stall the market. And so as I say, Oracle did that very successfully. But in my opinion, if IBM announced DB2, Oracle was going to switch places within a couple of years.
Did you feel you had enough infrastructure in your company at that point to have really grown at a very fast growth rate that you were describing?
Sure. I say we were, or I think put differently, IBM, so IBM had to know